The story continues with Istvan looking absolutely gobsmacked when he finally sets his eyes on the princess. All of a sudden, it's starting to look like the rumors he heard about Damer being trash were all just rumors after all. Apparently, his mind has changed because he sees an indescribable feature before him all of a sudden. With this feeling, he finally greets Alicia, claiming that it's a pleasure to meet her. For the first time in the story, he looks like a decent young man, and with this demeanor, he introduces himself to her, revealing that he's from the Gaidar household. As much as she probably hates him, she politely welcomes him into Damer with a very stern look on her face. Not surprisingly, Alicia isn't the only one with a mean look on her face because even her advisor is absolutely furious. After hearing Istvan introduce himself, he realizes that it's just as he thought and concludes that the ruler of the West has impure intentions because that's the only reason why his successor would dare address Alicia as lady even though she holds the title of Baroness in Damer. It doesn't take long for Istvan to notice the old man shooting death glares at him, and so he's quite confused because he probably doesn't know what he's done to offend the man. Either way, he doesn't really give a shit since his main concern now is the beautiful blue-haired lady that he plans to make his wife. At this point, Alicia finally responds to the uninvited guest. She thanks him for coming such a long way and then informs him that it would have been better if he had told them of his visit earlier. Hearing this, Istvan tries to cut in and say something, but before he can even get a word in, the Baroness cuts him off again. She goes on to point out how necessary it would have been to coordinate the details of his proposal in advance instead of just shoving it in her face. At this point, it's almost like she's scolding the young man and the knight who escorted him. Alicia admits how disappointed she is with the attitude that House Gaidar has shown toward her. At first, Istvan is taken aback by her strong outlook, but then, a smile creeps up on his face because he's actually impressed. Before meeting her, he had assumed that she was just a harmless young lady, but after this little exchange, he can tell that her words are as cold as ice. It's just the kind of atmosphere he likes, so he's looking forward to his time in Damer already. Before Istvan can respond with some rude comment, Sir Godin quickly chimes in to speak on his behalf. The white-haired knight quotes what Count Gaidar told him, claiming that fateful relationships born from a meeting are always precious. Unfortunately, Alicia doesn't really agree with him in this situation because she can't think of any noble family that would rush through meetings between households the way they've done. At this point, Godin realizes that the Baroness would be a tough nut to crack, so he simply tells her that their count values her greatly. So much so that he has sent his own son all the way to Damer to come see her. The old advisor listens to the exchange and literally starts boiling in anger. He's absolutely disgusted by the Westerners, but he also knows that he has to keep his emotions in check. As far as he's concerned, Count Gaidar's house must have a reason for acting so rudely right now. The old man believes that they might just be looking for a reaction and some kind of reason to finally take over Damer with force. While he's thinking about this, the bratty successor chimes in once again. Surprisingly, Istvan starts by apologizing to Lady Alicia for not observing certain manners and etiquette. Surely, he's not really sorry, but at least, he's played his part in portraying good behavior, and this allows Godin to introduce him as the heir of the Gaidar household. For some reason, the knight suggests that the successor's presence alone can replace all unnecessary procedures, and of course, Alicia isn't pleased to hear such a thing. She doesn't say anything in response and instead just glares at the both of them for a few seconds. Istvan can immediately tell that she's offended, so he lets out a small laugh and asks her not to get angry, claiming that they came all this way to see her after hearing good news. In response, the Baroness decides that they'll talk about the details along the way, but before then, she urges them to have some rest in the accommodations she has prepared for them. However, Istvan refuses to postpone their discussion for some reason. He claims that he would like to spend some more time talking to her alone instead of resting, and this statement strikes a nerve in Alicia. She is still dazed by his audacity when he claims that the current situation is quite urgent, even though he knows that it would be proper etiquette to greet her parents first. Of course, patience is a valuable virtue for everyone, but even that has its limits. If one remains patient despite the other party crossing boundaries, then it's no longer patience but simply an act of lowering oneself. The Baroness is enraged by Istvan's boldness and furiously asks him why he would dare suggest such a thing. Seeing the look on her face, the arrogant heir is delighted because his little scheme to get her man worked perfectly. This is the reaction he's been looking for, and he can't believe it was that easy to get it out of her. And as such, his personal aim for coming here has been achieved because they've obtained their justification. Just before the Westerners can show their true colors, something unexpected happens. All of a sudden, someone announces that the Knights of Bayazid have arrived, and this leaves everyone in the room absolutely shocked. Without any hesitation, Alicia's advisor tells for the knights to be led inside. Sure enough, the massive doors are opened immediately for the powerful Knights of Bayazid to enter. Of course, Sir Jaeger leads the way, while our boy and the other skilled swordsmen advance to greet the blue-haired lady. Jaeger is the first to greet the Baroness, admitting that it's been a while since they saw each other. With so much humility, they all greet the Master of Damer, revealing that they've come to pay their respects. For the first time since the Westerners arrived, Alicia has a smile on her face. She welcomes the knights gladly, and that's when our boy chimes in to apologize for being late. Istvan is immediately irritated by Vlad's presence and wastes no time in shooting death glares at him. The youngest knight steps forward to address Lady Alicia, revealing that he has come to answer her call. At this point, the smile on her face widens even more because she's so happy to see him. After all, Vlad is the only one who has the right to address her as lady, since he's the only one she permitted to do so the moment she gave him her handkerchief. Our blue-eyed hero reveals that he has come to Damer to pay the price in return for receiving her handkerchief. When the arrogant heir to the West hears this, he's pretty confused because he has no idea what handkerchief they're talking about. At this point, Vlad finally turns his gaze to Istvan, who he'll have to deal with very soon. He claims that this price he's come to pay will be his name, which is guaranteed by the Bayazid household in the honor of a knight. Our boy thinks about how he's climbed and struggled through the mires to get here. He's come a long way from the slums of Soara, and now that he's come face to face with the rogue knight Godin once again, he's glad to know that his shadow is now finally touching the traitor. Godin is shocked when he realizes that the young knight standing before him now is the same boy he fucked over a long time ago. He's quite bothered, but our boy wants the traitor to look him in the eye. Godin always seemed so elusive to Vlad, but now, he's delighted that he's finally obtained the right to stand before the Knights of the Blue Moonlight. Later that day, we see the men from the West having a chat. Istvan looks really upset because he really thought things would go smoothly, but that wasn't the case since the Bayazid Knights came out of nowhere to ruin everything for him. He never expected the Bayazid household to pull such a move. He's particularly pissed about the blonde swordsman that overshadowed him in front of the Baroness. Before now, Istvan had never heard about Vlad of Soara, and even though he'd thought he met our boy's gaze, he didn't. This is because the young blondie wasn't actually looking at him but actually had his eyes on Godin, who was standing behind him at the time. He chuckles as the incident plays back in his mind, and he finds it quite intriguing because he has never been humiliated like that before. The fact that Vlad didn't even bother to look at him for more than a second makes him really mad, but it also makes him quite curious. So, he asks Godin if he knows the young knight, claiming that Vlad seemed pretty arrogant. In response, the white-haired knight simply admits that he and Vlad had a short encounter once. The rogue knight is still surprised by what the kid has become because he never imagined that he'd meet him in a place like this. The scar-faced traitor thinks of the last time he saw Vlad, recalling that day, and realizes that he probably didn't spare the boy's life out of mere pity alone. Godin realizes that he probably let Vlad live because the shining possibilities that he carried within him had attracted him to want to support the boy. Even though it's clear now that Vlad might turn out to be a thorn in his flesh, Godin still amdots that the young knight is truly admirable. This rogue knight can't believe he's the person that he received a report about a while back. His thoughts are suddenly interrupted when the bratty son he's babysitting asks him what they're going to do now. Istvan reminds him that his father asks them to create a reason to take over Damer, and that's no longer looking likely since the Bayazid household has gotten involved. With this in mind, Godin ponders for a few seconds until he eventually comes up with an idea. After a brief moment of silence, he suddenly assures Istvan that there is still a way to finish their assignment, claiming that it would have to be a case of winner takes all. The knight is certain that this is a law that works everywhere, and since the Bayazid Knights are in the picture, he's convinced that this is the only way to go about things. The scene shifts at this point and we catch up with the Baroness, who is currently in a small meeting with Sir Jaeger and Vlad. They can't over some tea, and Lady Alicia tells them how Joseph promised to prove to her that the alliance between their households is a strong one. So, now that Sir Jaeger and the Knights of Bayazid are here, she concludes that there's no longer any need to prove it. Now that they're on the same page, Jaeger places the letter from his master Joseph on the table and she quickly picks it up to start reading. Even though Vlad has her handkerchief, Sir Joseph still thinks that it would be difficult for her to reject the marriage proposal of the Gaidar household with just that reason. As such, he's offered her a plan B in the letter she just opened, so by the time she's done reading, she's shocked to learn that there is another method to escape the clutches of the West. Once she's done reading, Sir Jaeger assures her that Joseph is doing his best for Damer at the moment, and she agrees with him, admitting that the idea in the letter is definitely a possible solution to her dilemma. Alicia reveals that her grandmother was also a part of the Oscar household, just like Madame Oksana was, which means that the same blood flows through her. Apparently, her old advisor didn't know about this, so when she reveals this, he's left speechless. The old man had no idea, so while he's expressing his shock, Sir Jaeger confirms this discovery. He goes on to reveal that the reason the Bayazid household had lent her their swords is also because she's inherited that bloodline. Hearing this, Alicia begins to process the possibilities of what she just learned. She realizes that if the Countess of Bayazid becomes her godmother, then it would mean that she can easily reject the marriage proposal from the Gaidar household. Because if the eldest son of the Gaidar household wants to marry her, then he'll have to get permission from the Countess first. Of course, there's no way that Lady Oksana would let Alicia get married into the family of a tyrant. But the blue-haired lady is still worried that she's inconveniencing the Countess unnecessarily. Seeing her concerns, Sir Jaeger quickly informs her that Madame Oksana has already promised to always welcome her. This gives the Baroness a sense of relief, but her advisor still isn't convinced that this is the best plan. As much as the Knights have revealed their good intentions, he also knows that this proposition would mean that the Bayazid household will have a justified reason to interfere in the matters of Heidel. And the fact that this would be the outcome makes the old man conclude that even Bayazid doesn't have completely pure intentions. It bothers him a whole lot, but at the same time, he knows that there's literally no other solution right now. It makes him wonder if the Bayazid household foresaw all of this and decided to delay so they could arrive later than the Westerners. If that's the case, then he concludes that Joseph Bayazid must be a truly fearsome man to have masterminded this whole operation. The old man feels that this must be a game of chess to Joseph and realizes that Dermer is already on top of the chessboard he set up by himself. Due to all the forces at play and the complexities involved in any choice she makes, Alicia is immediately under a lot of pressure. She's not sure what to do and wonders if she really has to decide right now. Of course, Sir Jaeger understands that she's currently on the hot seat, so he assures her that she doesn't have to make any choice right away. He claims that they understand she might be stressed out from having to decide and lets her know that she can take her time. Hearing this, the Baroness is pleased and thanks them for their consideration. Her advisor equally knows that it's a tough decision for her because between the Gaidar household who approached with the excuse of a marriage proposal and the Bayazid household that's using protection as bait, it's starting to look like there's really no one that Alicia can trust completely. The young lady zones out for a second until she matches Vlad's gaze. She calls him sir, knowing that he's now a full-fledged knight, and then asks him how he's feeling. She asks him if the work he's been entrusted with is alright for him. In response, he simply assures her that he'll do his best for her. After all, those are his orders and he even wants to follow them too. As soon as he says this, the lady is pretty taken aback and a wave of realization hits her advisor as well. The man concludes that there's actually one person that the Baroness can actually trust completely, and that's Vlad, because the young knight is willing to do what Lady Alicia needs without any conditions or schemes. Once our boy makes it clear that he's ready to fight for her no matter what, she thanks him sincerely and then asks him to show her the handkerchief she gave him before. She believes that it will need some mending since he's been carrying it around this whole time, so Vlad quickly reaches into his breastplate to search for it. Seeing this, Alicia figures that he always keeps the cloth deep within his armor, so it feels good to know that he treasures it. After a few seconds, our boy reveals that purple handkerchief and hands it over to her, but this is where Vlad messes up for the first time. Apparently, he forgot that Jemima also gave him a white handkerchief, so he doesn't remember to hide that one and takes it out with the purple one. Lady Alicia is bewildered when she sees Jemima's own above hers, and before Vlad can even realize what's going on, she snatches the white one from him in a flash. At this point, Vlad is dazed and so is the voice in his head. The voice claims that he didn't even see Alicia's hand coming because of how fast she was, and our boy admits the same. Once she has the white one, she takes a closer look and confirms that it's definitely not the one she gave to him, so she expresses her displeasure. Knowing that she is probably unhappy about this, Vlad tries to lighten the mood by laughing about it and explaining that it's nothing much since a friend gave it to him. He admits that he's been using both handkerchiefs, and Alicia concludes that this friend must be a girl too. Vlad doesn't even bother lying about this. He innocently confirms that Gemina is a young lady that he grew up with. All of a sudden, the Baroness starts to look like she's no longer mad, but the clueless boy who still knows nothing about women starts laughing too, feeling that Alicia is all good now. He even starts complimenting Gemina's handkerchief, talking about how it's pure cotton and really nice to use. Of course, the older men in the room are already feeling sorry for Vlad because they know he's just making the Baroness even more upset. Her advisor gets so nervous on his behalf, wishing that he wouldn't say any more dumb shit, while Jaeger just prays to God that Vlad would shut the hell up already. He finally opens his eyes to read the room, and that's when he sees how worried the other men are for him. He can also sense that Alicia is struggling not to hit him in the head, so he realizes that he must have caused trouble again. The voice in his head instantly agrees with him, assuring him that it's pretty serious too. Eventually, Sir Jaeger can no longer hide his annoyance, so he scolds Vlad severely. The advanced knight talks about how much he hates fools and how Vlad has managed to become the most foolish person he's ever met. Sir Joseph prepared everything for the young knight, so Jaeger can't understand how he managed to ruin everything all over a handkerchief. The one-eyed knight is so incredibly disappointed that he concludes that Vlad must have a talent for being foolish. Our boy is equally very ashamed of himself, so all he can do is accept the scolding and apologize for his carelessness. He admits that he wasn't expecting things to turn out the way they did, but just hearing him speak only makes Jaeger want to punch his face in. However, this advanced knight knows better than to beat the shit out of his vassal, so he holds his rage in. After all, Vlad will turn 18 after this winter, so he ought to start treating him as an adult from now. Besides, he's now also a knight, so he can no longer deal with him the way he would when he was still a young swordsman in training. With all of this in mind, Jaeger finally calms down and tells Vlad to leave the room. Our boy is shocked to hear this, so the green-eyed knight repeats himself only once and tells him to get the hell out already. Jaeger is extremely pissed right now, so he doesn't even want to see Vlad for the meantime. He threatens to beat him up like he used to, and our boy surprisingly claims that he'd like to see Jaeger try. He challenges the advanced knight to beat him, feeling confident that he can't lay a hand on him. Of course, this just upsets Jaeger even more, so he warns Vlad to get out of his sight for the last time. The advanced knight starts cracking his knuckles, claiming that he might not be able to hold himself back anymore, and just when it looks like the big guy is about to reach his limit, our boy runs off like a coward. It's quite funny the way he flees after talking big, and Jaeger just begins to wonder what he's going to do with that kid. Vlad escapes and finds himself in another room where the other Bayazid knights are having some wine. As soon as he enters, they all start staring at him, so he asks them what's up, and they immediately start mocking him for his little handkerchief incident. As far as they're concerned, the young swordsman is a flirt who is juggling the hearts of two ladies. They tease him for making such a terrible mistake before the Baroness, and once they're all laughing at him, it starts to get to him. It's no longer funny, so Vlad claims that he'll like to be alone, which just makes them mock him anymore for even thinking that they'll leave the room for him. Once it's clear that they won't stop teasing him, he walks out the door to go elsewhere, and they mock him even more, suggesting that they warn the maids of Heinel now that a stallion is roaming the mansion. That little accident really blew up into a really big problem for Vlad, and now he's wondering how things turned out like this. All he had to do was take out Alicia's handkerchief, but he somehow managed to screw up big time back there, and he doesn't even know how it happened. Our boy walks along the hallway all alone while thinking deeply about everything that's going on. He really wants to do well for his first mission as a knight, so it's sad that he already fucked up so badly. But what's even more baffling is how the other knights simply mocked him instead of comforting him. At this point, the voice in his head chimes in, claiming that it was nice to see them tease him like that. Apparently, the voice believes that they weren't even mocking him for real because that's their own way of showing affection. Those guys are hard men who were trained by Rudiger, so seeing them laugh and joke about Vlad like that makes the voice feel that they must have acknowledged our boy as one of theirs. In response, Vlad claims that he can believe it because something like this has happened in the past too. Regardless of whether they're back alley thugs or knights of high standing, our boy realizes that people are just similar everywhere. He had the same experience back in Soara while working under Jorge and his men. Once that thought is out of the way, he thinks back to the main issue at hand. Now that he's messed up, he doesn't think his situation can be helped, and he really doesn't have anywhere to go right now because the other knights will chew him up while Jaeger will probably murder him if he catches him. With this in mind, he looks out the window and spots a lonely tree sitting in the middle of the field all alone just like him. He suddenly realizes that it's been a while since he prayed, so he figures that it wouldn't be a bad idea to go out and do that right now. Meanwhile, Lady Alicia is still pretty upset. She sits at her table trying to make sense of what Vlad did, but the more she thinks about it, the more absurd it is to her. She begins to feel that maybe the young knight really is that senseless, but still she doesn't get how he managed to keep her handkerchief together with another woman's. While she is no longer a fan of our boy, her advisor keeps trying to help Vlad. He points out how clean he kept the handkerchief, and she tries to downplay it, but the old man assures her that it's very unlike a young man of his age to be that careful with something that's small. At this point, Alicia is a little bit interested even though she's still mad at Vlad, so she asks the old man what he's trying to say. In response, her advisor reminds her that Vlad has been taken on a lot of difficult missions since she gave him her handkerchief. He's fought all sorts of dangerous enemies but still managed to keep it clean, so this means that he took extra care of the handkerchief to keep it that way. The old man admits that Vlad committed a huge mistake due to his ignorance, but he explains that this could also mean that his thoughts and intentions were completely innocent as well. As far as this man is concerned, Vlad won't be like the others who will lift their swords for her with a scheme in mind. After talking a lot of sense back into Alicia's head, she starts to see his point. She's still reluctant to get back on Team Vlad, but then that's when the wise old man tells her to look out the window. They both look out to see Vlad praying at the tree, and her advisor reveals that all of the boy's actions show that there's a reason why the Bayazid household holds him in high regard. All of a sudden, Alicia's face brightens up because she's glad to see that Vlad still hasn't changed since the first time they met. The smile quickly gets wiped off her face when she sees someone marching over to go meet Vlad. This figure turns out to be none other than Istvan, who is currently closing the gap between him and the unsuspecting knight. They're too far away so they can't help him, so the old man begins to panic and asks if there's anyone outside that can warn Vlad because as far as he's concerned, it's an emergency. While all that's going on, our boy is deep in his mind space where he's trying to trigger all the memories he has of this lonely tree. He asks the voice to search for them, but there's not much luck with it. Vlad remembers that he got some memories back after seeing Noir, and the voice suggests that there's some relationship between him and this serpent spirit. Their little meditation is interrupted when the voice suddenly senses someone approaching. Hearing this, Aur immediately regains his alertness and quietly listens to hear who it is. Once Istvan gets close enough, he expresses how surprised he is when he learns that there's a grave in a place like this. As such, he concludes that someone dear to Vlad must be buried here to make him come this far out to pray. At this point, our boy gets back on his feet, and before even turning around, he informs the arrogant Westerner that this is a place one can only enter if they've been permitted by its master. He's furious that Istvan would desecrate the place with his vile presence, so he turns around and reaches for his sword. Seeing this, the brat feels challenged, so he wonders why Vlad can come here and he can't. In response, our boy reveals that he has received permission to be there, but Istvan doesn't really care about that because he's just glad that the young knight is finally looking at him now. Istvan is excited to finally be seen by the young knight that came to ruin his assignment in Dermer. He admits that he started to feel like he was transparent back when the Bayazid knights first came because Vlad was only staring at God. As you can imagine, this doesn't really concern our boy, who is currently pissed by the brat's audacity. He quietly waits for the guy to finish saying whatever he has to say just so that he can send him away. Ishtvan keeps spewing garbage and then suddenly reveals something that the rogue knight told him to disclose to Vlad. Apparently, if Vlad gives up on Baron Heinel's handkerchief, then Godin will consider that as the price for the second jerky. Clearly, that's all gibberish to literally anyone else, but our boy has had an encounter with Godin before, so he knows exactly what it means, and judging by the look on his face, it's a really disturbing statement. Of course, Ishtvan has no idea what it means. He's just passing the message, so he asks Vlad to tell him what the knight is supposed to mean by it. After a while, our boy is still pretty dazed and shaken by the message, and Ishtvan can see this. He wants Vlad to tell him what this cryptic message means and admits that he's not that curious about the relationship that they had in the past. Right now, his only priority is the handkerchief, so he boldly tells Vlad to hand it over. As you would expect, there's no way in hell that this young knight is letting it go, so he challenges Ishtvan to come and take it if he has the balls. The arrogant successor of the West is shocked that a kid from Soara would even dare talk to him like that. He can't believe that Vlad would doubt that he's capable of overpowering him, so this makes him even more desperate to get the handkerchief. It's no news that the West does not hide what they want, since it is a world where only the greedy can survive, but at the same time, the North does not ever fall back, since it is a world that you can only survive by not letting things get taken away from you. Seeing that the blonde knight has no intentions of giving up the handkerchief, Ishtvan isn't too surprised, because Godin did tell him that Vlad wouldn't listen, and since that's the case now, he figures that he doesn't have any other choice left. Both men already know what's coming next, and they're both ready for it. As you would expect, Ishtvan is the challenger, so he is the first to draw his sword, and boy is it massive. It shouldn't even be physically possible to hold such a gigantic sword with one hand, but the successor of the West is one crazy brute. He points his blade at Vlad's face, with the extremely sharp tip of the sword mere inches away from our boy's face. With his eyes glowing red with desperation, he calls Vlad the rookie from the north, and in that moment, he challenges him to a duel for Alicia's handkerchief. Our boy is absolutely unfazed despite having a huge sword shoved in his face. After a brief moment of silence, he tells Ishtvan to do it again, and this leaves the brute a little confused because he doesn't get what the kid is talking about. Seeing the look of confusion on his face, our boy decides to break things down for him. He reminds Ishtvan that he's Bayazid's knight and also Lady Alicia's knight, so he informs the challenger that he would have to say his name properly if he truly wants to challenge him to a duel. After making his point, he concludes by calling Ishtvan a hooligan of the West. Later that night, Godin is busy with some paperwork which mostly involves reading all of Vlad's recent accomplishments. He learns that the kid annihilated an organization of a city and pushed out the enforcer of a dark mage. He also finds out that Vlad lured the deathworm and took down the lindworm by himself. At this point, Godin begins to feel that Bayazid was too urgent in Vlad's case. Standards and common sense exist, but he feels that they fluffed this too much. As far as the rogue knight is concerned, the boy would have developed well on his own even without all of these missions he was sent on, but now he feels that this is all a manufactured possibility. He thinks back to his clash with the kid and recalls that it was just a single sword path. To him, it was just a display of a possibility in the end, and he believes that it is absolutely not at the level of being able to reach the position of a dragon slayer in 1 year. Even though he feels that Bayazid rushed things with Vlad, he admits that it's amazing that they awakened his aura. After all, that's not something one can acquire through being taught. Now that he's learned all of this, Godin regrets not bringing Vlad with him using whatever means. His thoughts are suddenly interrupted when Ishtvan returns, so he turns to ask the successor about the handkerchief. Of course, the brute wasn't able to get it and confirms that Vlad is truly someone who doesn't listen. Godin is surprised that the big guy came back empty-handed because he thought Ishtvan would just take it from Vlad by force. Hearing this, the heir to the West admits that he was about to do that but couldn't because the mood was spoiled. It turns out that the Bayazid knights and some of the Heidel guards rushed to the scene just before he could engage the young knight. Ishtvan has no idea how they knew what was up though, but at least, he managed to request a duel before they interfered. Hearing this, Godin asks when it is and Ishtvan reveals that it's in 2 days. He also reveals that they have to bring a priest to supervise the duel. In response, Godin claims that it's good to have a priest there as a witness because they won't be able to protest after. With the way things are going, the rogue knight is confident that they'll be able to have justification and profit very soon. That's all great for the West, but Ishtvan has a personal issue with Vlad now, so his own reward would be the young knight's face contorting in fear. The scene shifts, and that's where we see Sir Jaeger having a private discussion with the old advisor. The man asks the knight if there's any chance of victory in the duel, and Jaeger admits that it won't be easy. Ishtvan is the oldest son of the conqueror of the West, the Gaidar family, so they all know that he's the real deal, a ferocious warrior who honed his skills while receiving the best education from his childhood. Even Sir Lamond has attested to the skill of the Western knights, so he knows that it won't be an easy duel. In fact, Sir Jaeger is afraid that Vlad's chances of winning are very low at the moment. Hearing this, the old advisor is just grateful for Jaeger's honesty, but at the same time, he's worried about what would happen if Lady Alicia's handkerchief falls into the Ishtvan's hands. However, Sir Jaeger tells him not to worry too much, reminding him that Vlad fought a knight while being a squire. Besides, he assures him that Master Joseph didn't send them to Daremer without plans. Hearing this, the old man curiously asks if they have a good plan, so Jaeger quietly informs him that this duel is just a process. Seeing the confidence in the knight's eyes, the old counselor is relieved because he had no idea that Bayazid had made many preparations, so he offers to support them with anything they need now that he knows they came with backup. Hearing this, Jaeger doesn't hesitate to make his first request, and once he's asked what it is, he reveals that they would like to suggest a location for the duel to Lady Alicia. Fast forward to the day of the duel, and Istvan is really baffled by the location chosen for the duel. They're in an open field, so he's really confused because he knows that duels usually happen in a lobby or a hall. At this point, Godin informs him that there was a special request from the Baroness. As it relates to a proposal, she requested that her dead parents buried in the ground be there to watch over the duel as well. Hence, that's why they're currently in the open field outside the mansion waiting for the fight to start. Hearing this, Istvan admits that it's a reasonable excuse, but that doesn't change the fact that he finds it to be an eerie plain. It's cleaned up to the point that he can't even see a small pebble, so he wonders if it rained in the morning, but Godin informs him that it didn't. It's strange since the grass is wet when it didn't rain earlier, but Godin urges him to ensure it even though the duel is happening in the unfamiliar environment of the north. The rogue knight looks over at the camp of the Bayazid knights and thinks about how constructing a battlefield ahead of battle to have the upper hand is one of the basic actions of a commander. It's just the kind of thing he expects from Sir Jaeger. Speaking of Jaeger, the green-eyed knight notices the northern knight staring at him with knowing looks, so he reminds Vlad that Gadar's vigor is sharp and encourages the kid to get his breathing in check. Our boy is starting to feel the pressure at this point because he is probably aware of how powerful his opponent is by now. Jaeger is equally nervous, but he believes that the boy can win. After all, he has endured well in front of his archenemy all this time, and at the edge of that patience, only Vlad's creed to protect his promise to Lord Joseph must lie. It's almost as if our boy can hear Jaeger's thoughts, and after a few moments of getting his breathing under control, Vac finally opens his eyes, revealing that he's ready. The advanced knight is truly proud of him at this moment, and as our boy gets on his feet to prepare for battle, Jaeger urges him to go teach the usurpers what a just sword represents. It's almost time for the young warriors to clash swords, and with Alicia seated to watch the duel for her honor, the priest begins to announce the rules. Or it can be used for this fight, but since it's not a duel to decide life and death, the match will be interrupted if the duelists are in danger at any point. After stating the conditions for the duel, the priest asks both warriors if they agree with the rules, and of course, they have no objections. Once everyone is on the same page, the priest officially begins the duel, and Istvan looks even more terrifying all of a sudden. He tries to taunt our boy, asking him if he's still taking care of the handkerchief, but Vlad simply asks him what he'll give if he loses the fight. At first, he doesn't understand the question, but Vlad elaborates and asks if he can at least take his huge sword if he wins. Hearing this, Istvan becomes nervous because he realizes that he could also lose if he's not careful. Turns out he's not the only one who can play mind games. Anyway, Vlad goes on to mess with him even more. He reveals that he heard how it's the nature of the Westerners to rob people and asks Istvan if it's something he takes pride in. Before he can even process this, our boy informs him that there is a place where robbing is part of life, but there, getting things stolen would result in death. He makes this point, referring to the back alleys of Soara where he grew up, and concludes his little chat wondering who is greedier between the both of them, since one of them robs out of desire, and the other had to rob for survival. At this point, our boy finally draws his sword and takes his battle stance, which Istvan finds weird. Just then, the Bayazid knights reveal their great swords, and when Godin sees this, he realizes that the Northerners expected a duel from the very beginning. With the support and morale boost from his fellow knights, our boy is ready for battle, so he lifts his sword, eager to find out just how amazing Gadar's successor really is. Istvan gets tired of Vlad trying to throw him off his game, so he charges at the blonde with a mighty swing. Of course, our boy casually jumps out of the way to avoid getting hit, but in that split second, the brute follows up with another insane strike of his sword. Vlad manages to block it, but he might have underestimated the power behind the blow, so he almost gets split in two. However, he manages to block it until he gets the chance to slip under. He tries to land a counterattack, but Istvan doesn't give him any breathing space. The big guy attempts another mean backhand swing, but Vlad sees it just in time to dodge it and regain his balance. All of the Bayazid knights watching are really impressed with the boy's performance, and Godin is equally surprised. He can see that Vlad is dodging attacks that use weight and deflecting the thrusts that use length. As such, he concludes that the young blondie is thoroughly prepared for the duel. Moreover, the slippery grass makes it comfortable for quick movement, but it's not good for swordsmanship that requires strong supporting steps. Godin knows that all of this can't be a coincidence, so he wonders who designed a field this elaborate. Young Master Joseph might have never been able to wield a sword, but he's one hell of a mastermind. Back in the duel, Istvan keeps trying to land a bit on our boy, using all the aggression and power he can muster, but Vlad remains just one step ahead of him. He starts to get really pissed that he can't get a single blow, and so he uses even more power and attempts a deadly downward drive of his sword, hoping to bury the young knight right there, but once again the slippery swordsman manages to block the strike. The force from the attack almost pushes him down, but he manages to stand his ground and stay on his feet. He blocks it just long enough for him to slip away once again, and at this point, it becomes really baffling for Istvan. The big brute can't understand how Vlad keeps getting away each time, especially since he was told that the boy is just a rookie who has only held a sword for a year. As far as he's concerned, that's not enough time to be this good in a duel, so he is absolutely taken aback by the fact that Vlad is able to take his sword. While he's still trying to wrap his head around it, the slippery knight in question charges at him with blistering speed. Our boy has been playing defense since the battle started, so now he wants to see what Istvan is really capable of. The brute sees him coming at him and quickly takes another big swing. Thankfully, our hero sees it coming, so he stops in his tracks and quickly dodges the strike. The Westerner goes all out at this point, desperate to land even one hit at least, so he tries another downward drive, but our boy just jumps out of the way like it's a sparring session. Vlad's technique begins to irritate Istvan, so he angrily tells him to fight properly, wondering how long he's just going to keep running away. In response, our boy just taunts him even more, suggesting that he's not done running. As if that's not frustrating enough, the wet ground makes Istvan feel like he's fighting on a mud field. He's afraid that he'll end up giving Vlad an opening to defeat him if he drags this on for long. Just thinking about it makes him furious because it would be an utter humiliation, losing to an unnamed knight. With this in mind, he figures that he'll need to trigger Vlad to attack, and what better way to do that than with some severe trash talking. Istvan accuses Vlad of crawling from a lowly place and having a disgusting fighting style. And since that's just weak sauce, he goes on to talk smack about Vlad's mother, claiming that the woman who birthed him would turn her eyes away from him if she saw how disgusting he was. For a split second, it looks like those words actually got to Vlad, but the look of rage is instantly replaced by a mischievous smile because there's no way he's letting Istvan get to him like that. Between the two of them, the brute is more likely to act out of rage in response to some trash talk, so Vlad decides to give the guy a taste of his own medicine. He starts by admitting how disappointed he is, because he thought that nobles make classier taunts than the thugs in the slums. Istvan is taken aback by this, and while he's trying to figure out what Vlad is up to, the slippery knight charges at him, revealing that the thing he just said about his mother is basically a greeting in the back alley. Vlad gets the tip of his sword up to Istvan's face before the brat is able to block it with his huge blade. Our boy then goes on to talk shit about Count Gadar, claiming that the man would jump in happiness if he saw his son right now because he just showed his noble blood to a back alley orphan who just became a knight. It's at this point that we see the slash Vlad made on Istvan's face, with the noble blood dripping down his face. Enraged by this, Istvan uses his aura to blast Vlad away, calling him a piece of shit. Our boy gets back on his feet just as the brute approaches him again. Istvan is absolutely livid, but Vlad is unfazed even though the big guy tells him to throw away any thoughts of having a peaceful death. Even Godin is confident that this is where his ward wins the duel, and Jaeger admits that the depth of Istvan's world is on a whole nother level. It's just the kind of thing he expects from Count Gadar's successor, but he still believes that Vlad will be able to hold out even now. As for our boy, well, he knows that a drawn-out fight using greatswords eats oneself away, and the stamina would bottom out if he uses aura on top of it. So, he figures that he can at least end the duel in a draw if he keeps avoiding all of Istvan's attacks. Lord Joseph already told him that it's fine if he loses the duel. The Bayazid knights have been nervous from the start. Sir Jaeger, his teacher, and even Lady Alicia, who left her honor with him, all view his chances of victory to be very low, probably because they don't expect that someone from the back alleys will be able to win against the son of a count family who grew up receiving the best education. Even if he loses this duel, he knows that there would be the kinds of gains he can obtain. But instead, he wants to escape now. Our boy doesn't want to lose. He wants to escape from running, from avoiding, and from promising for the next time. At the very least, he wants to be able to win in front of the knight who destroyed his nest. With this in mind, he activates his aura and summons his world, telling Godin to take a good look at it, and see that he now has the proud qualification, the very thing he needed to be able to approach the Knight of the Blue Moon. These are the fruits of his struggles. Well then, we're once again fully caught up with all the chapters, and for those of you who have been keeping an eye out on my personal lore along with all the manhwas I cover, I'm happy to announce that I've moved to Japan this Friday. There's a lot to do here for me and a ton to figure out still, but I'll try my best to keep you guys posted about it on my Instagram if anyone is interested. Following me on Instagram is also the best way for you guys to reach out and find me again if my channel is ever in trouble, so I highly suggest you doing so. More content is coming out soon, so please be sure to stay tuned and subscribe for more uploads. Until next time.